The transfer portal has opened, and we are ready for a wild ride. Ben Spicer joined by Tom Lang. The portal opened up. We're in day one, and things are getting crazy already. Florida State has 5 players who have officially entered their name into the transfer portal. AJ Duffy, the quarterback, linebacker Dylan Brown Turner, running back CJ Campbell, tight end Preston Daniel, and tight end Markeston Douglas. Tom, initial thoughts on those 5 Florida State players who are now in the transfer portal?
Yeah, some that are not surprises, Ben. First and foremost, AJ Duffy. When you see multiple instances of Florida State going to a third quarterback this year, obviously there's the Louisville game in which you name a starter. That's not Jordan Travis or Tate Rodemaker, and it is instead Brock Glenn over AJ Duffy. It seems like the writing is on the wall there. So AJ Duffy wants to play football, and Florida State has sent the message, your best chance is to play somewhere else. Makes a lot of sense. Dylan Brown Turner, we hardly knew ye at linebacker. Not altogether shocking. I'm happy for CJ Campbell, somebody who did play on Saturday night in the ACC Championship. In fact, he was on the field for the first snap with Lawrence Toafili, ran some wildcat plays with Lawrence Toafili, landed a pretty good block to spring a long run for Florida State. But it's just such a crowded running back room, Ben, when you consider the fact that even though Trey Benson is likely off to his next destination in the pro game, Florida State is landing 2 very good running backs in the 2024 class. So CJ Campbell wants to play. He moves on. Not a surprise there. Preston Daniel, kind of the same thing, a little bit strange down the stretch. Jackson West got a lot more reps. I don't know if that was a health thing or not as it pertained to Preston Daniel, but you saw number 48 on the field more on offensive sets than 45. The strange one to me, this has been strange since the beginning of the season, is Markeston Douglas.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, with my own eyes, I saw it. He had a great fall camp, was praised every day in practice, and I felt like behind Jaheim Bell, Markeston Douglas was going to get the second most snaps in the offense. Instead, it was Kyle Morlock. I don't know what went into that decision. It's not like Kyle Morlock is a bad player. In fact, it's imperative now, Ben, that Kyle Morlock returns for next season. It's imperative with all of these tight ends leaving. So it was a weird story. Markeston did play. It's not like he didn't. He got a touchdown in the Pitt game, a couple of big blocks down the stretch. I just thought, Ben, he was going to be a much larger part of the offense. So for Biscuit, it just feels like a potential budding relationship at the end of last season that never got to that next step.
And that's a concern now, I feel like, for Florida State, that depth at tight end, losing 2 of those guys. And Markeston, was primed, I think, to see the field more. You could expect, it hasn't been announced yet, but we're assuming that Jaheim Bell is probably going to put his name into the pro draft. Kyle Morlock, obviously, is going to play an expanded role next year, but losing 2 of those tight ends, where does Florida State go from here? And is that a concern at that position now for you?
Yeah, with Jaheim Bell, there's an Instagram post out there in which he says forever grateful. It seems to fall in line with posts that Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman have put out there. It's just far fewer words. In fact, it's 2 words and an emoji. So it does sound like he's doing the obvious thing, which is moving on to that next level. Florida State does have one of the top tight ends in all of 2024's recruiting cycle in Landon Thomas, committed, and within a couple of weeks should be signing of his letter of intent. So there's an opening to get a younger player more playing time. Jackson West, I assume, has to be a contender now for at least reps as a blocker heading into next season. Mike Norvell has talked about all the injury stuff that Jackson has had to overcome, and he's played some important reps down the stretch, with Kyle Morlock being your featured tight end in the room. Assuming that Kyle comes back, he is absolutely going to be your featured tight end in the 2024 offense. The question is, where do they go from there? Is a player like Jarrell Powers, who's been on the roster for a couple of years, used more as he grown and developed into that role? Perhaps the spring is a time where they can evaluate whether or not Jarrell is ready for prime time. There are other guys. Brian Courtney's moved back and forth between linebacker and tight end. Who knows where they're going to have him this upcoming year? If he's going to continue on with the roster at Florida State, don't see any indication as to no. But right now they're thin at the position, Ben. They have a recruit coming in, a top flight recruit at that coming in. They may hit the portal for more depth. There are options, but it just feels like the tight end room as we sit here today for 2024 is a little bit thinner than it was in 2023, where you had a lot of versatility in that room.
We mentioned the linebacker Dylan Brown Turner. I know we didn't see him this year on the field in game action, but linebacker has been a position of concern. I think during the season, they kind of played up to expectations and maybe even exceeded expectations opposed to what we saw at the beginning of the season. But is that a depth issue as well? Dylan Brown Turner, we might have seen him work his way into the rotation next year. So are you concerned about the linebacker depth now?
Oh, I was before this announcement, and I don't know that this has much of an impact. I don't mean to be rude in this situation, but if if you were going to have an opportunity to play anywhere in a Power 5 school, it would be at Florida State this upcoming spring. So there must have been some conversation that said it's just not going to happen for you, young man. Or, perhaps he got an offer to go somewhere else. I don't know. Well, all I'm saying is the opportunity is there this spring in Tallahassee to earn a ton of reps at linebacker. So for Dylan Brown Turner to leave, I think that's maybe more about the coach's decision. They will need to prioritize linebacker near or at the top of the list, whether it's in, closing out the 2024 class or bringing in more veteran help to fortify the ranks with a DJ Lundy, and Omar Graham, Blake Nicholson, Justin Cryer. You're going to need at least one more veteran, if not two more veterans, to help round out that unit, because there was a drop-off when Bethune and Deloach came off the field this season.
Just day one of the transfer portal. 5 Florida State players have already entered their name into the portal. Warchant.com is your source for transfer portal news and recruiting news this December, of course. It's going to be very busy, very active. We'll be seeing a lot of Michael Langston, I would imagine, Tom, over these next couple weeks. So make sure you stay locked in here to Warchant TV and Warchant.com for all the latest